What happens when the most dangerous man in the city discovers that someone hurt the only person he truly loves? The phone rang at 3 in the morning, cutting through the silence of the penthouse like a blade. Archie Grant didn't sleep much these days. Running an empire built on shadows and secrets kept a man alert, kept him paranoid, kept him alive. But when he saw the name flashing on the screen, his blood turned to ice. It was his sister's number, except it wasn't her voice when he answered. Mr. Grant? The voice was male, professional, careful. This is Mercy General Hospital. Your sister was brought in about an hour ago. She's been injured. The world tilted. Archie was already moving, pulling on clothes, grabbing his keys, his mind a whirlwind of terrible possibilities. How bad? She's stable now, but sir, you should come quickly. She's been asking for you. The drive to the hospital took 12 minutes. Archie made it in 7, running red lights, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. His sister, his baby sister. The only good thing in his life, the only person who'd never looked at him with fear or calculation. The only one who remembered the boy he'd been before their father was murdered. Before he'd taken over the family business. Before he'd become the man everyone in the city feared. Her name was Catherine, but he'd called her Katie since she was 3 years old and couldn't pronounce her own name properly. She was 24 now, a medical student. Brilliant and kind and everything he wasn't. He'd kept her separate from his world, protected her, made sure she stayed clean while he waded through blood and corruption. And now someone had hurt her. The rage that filled Archie was cold and absolute. The kind of fury that didn't burn hot but froze everything it touched. He parked illegally and ran into the emergency room, his presence immediately changing the atmosphere. People moved out of his way without being asked. They knew who he was. Everyone knew who Archie Grant was. He found her in a private room, and what he saw made him stop breathing. Katie's face was bruised, swollen almost beyond recognition. Her left eye was purple and closed, her lips split and still bleeding slightly despite the stitches. Her arm was in a cast. And the look in her one good eye when she saw him, the fear and pain and shame that broke something inside him that he'd thought was long past breaking. Archie moved to her bedside, his hands shaking as he reached for her uninjured hand. Who did this? His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried a promise of violence that made the nurse in the corner step back nervously. Katie's eye filled with tears. Alex, I'm sorry. I should have listened to you. I should have been more careful. Tell me who did this to you, Archie repeated, each word precise and cold. Katie took a shaky breath. His name is Randall Lodge. I met him 3 months ago at a coffee shop near campus. He seemed nice, normal. We started dating. At first, everything was perfect. He was charming, attentive, said all the right things. Archie's jaw clenched. Go on. Then he started getting possessive, wanted to know where I was all the time, who I was with. Got angry when I spent time studying instead of with him. Tonight, she paused, her voice breaking. Tonight he found out who you are, who our family really is. He said I'd been lying to him, keeping secrets. He said I thought I was too good for him because of our money. Archie felt the rage building, a tsunami of fury that he forced himself to contain. Only for her. Only because she needed him calm right now. What happened tonight, Katie? We were at his apartment. He'd been drinking. He started yelling, accusing me of using him, of thinking he wasn't good enough. I tried to leave, and she touched her bruised face with trembling fingers. He hit me, over and over. I tried to fight back, but he was so much stronger. If his roommate hadn't come home and pulled him off, I don't know what would have happened. The nurse spoke up quietly. She had 2 cracked ribs as well, Mr. Grant, and significant bruising on her torso. We've documented everything. The police have been notified. Archie nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The police? As if they mattered. As if they could deliver the kind of justice Randall Lodge had earned. Katie squeezed his hand. Alex, promise me you won't do anything crazy. Promise me you'll let the law handle this. He looked at his sister, at her battered face, at the fear in her eyes, and he lied to her for the first time in his life. I promise, sweetheart. I'll let the law handle it. But Archie Grant had never been good at keeping promises, especially ones made under duress. He stayed with Katie until she fell asleep, the medication pulling her under. Then he stepped into the hallway and made a phone call. The man who answered picked up on the first ring. Boss? Ivan, Archie said, his voice devoid of emotion. I need you to find someone. Randall Lodge. Early 20s. Lives somewhere near the university. I want his entire life mapped out by morning. Address, family, friends, schedule, debts, secrets, everything. There was a pause. How deep do you want us to go? All the way down, Archie said. And Ivan, he's mine. When we find him, nobody touches him but me. Understood. Archie hung up and leaned against the wall, closing his eyes. In his world, he'd done terrible things. He'd hurt people, destroyed lives, built his empire on the broken backs of anyone who stood in his way. He'd made peace with being a monster a long time ago, but he'd kept Katie separate from all of it. She was his light in the darkness, his reminder that somewhere beneath the violence and corruption, there was still a part of him that was human. And Randall Lodge had put his hands on her, had beaten her, had broken her ribs and bruised her face and made her afraid. For that, Randall Lodge was going to learn what true fear felt like. By morning, Ivan had delivered. Randall Lodge, 26 years old, worked as a personal trainer at a gym downtown. Came from a middle-class family in the suburbs. Had a history of short relationships that ended badly. 3 complaints filed against him by ex-girlfriends for harassment, though charges were never pressed. A pattern of control and violence that had been building for years. He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment on Baker Street with a roommate named Tom. He drove a beat-up sedan. He owed money to several people. He had a temper and an ego, and a sense of entitlement that had finally found the wrong target. Archie read through the file in his office, memorizing every detail. Then he looked up at Ivan and the 3 other men standing before him. All loyal, all deadly, all waiting for orders. Where is he now? At the gym, Ivan said. His shift ends at noon. He'll probably go home after. Does he know about Katie? That she's in the hospital? Ivan shook his head. We've been monitoring his phone. He hasn't tried to contact her. Hasn't called hospitals. He's acting like nothing happened. The rage flared again, white hot behind Archie's eyes. He thinks he can just move on. Thinks there won't be consequences. Looks that way, boss. Archie stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Then let's educate him. They took 2 cars, unmarked. Nothing that could be traced back to Archie's legitimate businesses. They parked a block from the gym and waited. At 12:15, Randall Lodge emerged, gym bag over his shoulder, laughing at something on his phone. He was tall, muscular, handsome in a generic way. The kind of man who'd learned early that his looks opened doors and never developed anything deeper. The kind of man who thought he could take what he wanted without paying the price. He was wrong. They followed him home, watching as he parked in the apartment complex lot and headed for his building. Archie gave him 10 minutes to get settled. Then he and his men entered the building, moving with purpose. No masks, no subtlety. Archie wanted Randall to see his face, wanted him to know exactly who was coming for him and why. They kicked in the door to apartment 3B. Randall was in the kitchen, making a sandwich, still in his gym clothes. He spun around at the sound, confusion crossing his face. What the? Then he saw Archie, and recognition dawned. His face went pale. You're Catherine's brother. Archie walked forward slowly, deliberately. His men fanned out, securing the apartment. The roommate wasn't home. A small mercy. This needed to be personal. "You put your hands on my sister," Archie said, his voice quiet and deadly. Randall backed up against the counter. "Look, man, I don't know what she told you, but it wasn't like that. We had a fight. Things got heated. She's exaggerating." Archie's fist moved faster than Randall could track, slamming into his stomach. Randall doubled over, gasping. "Let me be clear," Archie said, grabbing Randall by the hair and forcing him to look up. "You beat my sister. You broke her ribs. You bruised her face so badly she can barely see. And now you're going to learn what happens to men who hurt women under my protection." Randall tried to fight back, throwing a wild punch. Archie caught his wrist and twisted, feeling bones grind. Randall screamed. It was music. "No, please," Randall gasped. "I'm sorry. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know." "And that makes it better?" Archie asked, genuinely curious. If she'd been someone else's sister, some girl without connections, that would have made it acceptable? Randall had no answer. Archie nodded to Ivan. The room they'd prepared was in a warehouse on the east side, far from prying eyes and curious ears. They drove Randall there in the trunk of one of the cars, and by the time they arrived, he was sobbing, begging, promising anything. Archie felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pleasure, just cold purpose. The warehouse was empty except for a chair bolted to the floor and a table covered with tools. Randall's eyes went wide when he saw it, understanding finally penetrating his panic. "You can't do this," he said, his voice breaking. "I have rights. The police?" "You think the police care about you?" Archie asked, almost amused. "You think anyone is coming to save you?" He gestured to Ivan, who forced Randall into the chair and secured him with zip ties. Randall struggled, but it was useless. When he was immobilized, Archie pulled up another chair and sat directly in front of him, close enough that their knees almost touched. "I want you to understand something," Archie said calmly. "What's about to happen to you isn't revenge. It's a lesson. You hurt someone I love. You thought you could put your hands on my sister and walk away. You were wrong." "Please," Randall whispered. "I'll do anything. Leave town, disappear, whatever you want. I'll never come near her again." Archie tilted his head. "You're right about that. You'll never come near her again. But not because you're choosing to stay away. Because by the time I'm done with you, you'll be too afraid to even think her name." Archie stood slowly, walking to the table where the tools lay arranged with careful precision. Each one had been chosen for a specific purpose, a specific lesson. He picked up a pair of pliers, testing the grip, watching Randall's eyes follow the movement with growing terror. "You see these?" Archie asked conversationally. "These are for people who put their hands where they don't belong. For people who grab and hurt and think there won't be consequences." Randall thrashed against the zip ties, the plastic cutting into his wrists, drawing blood. Ivan stepped forward, pressing down on Randall's shoulders to keep him still. "Please," Randall sobbed. "I'll pay you. Whatever you want, money, information, anything. I have money. My family has money." Archie set the pliers down and picked up something else, a small knife with a wicked edge. "Money," he repeated thoughtfully. "You think this is about money? You think there's an amount you could pay that would erase what you did to Katie? That would take back the fear in her eyes, the bruises on her face, the way she flinched when I tried to comfort her? No amount of money buys your way out of this." He moved closer, the knife catching the dim warehouse light. "But here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you a choice, Randall. A real choice. Not the false ones you gave my sister when she tried to leave and you wouldn't let her. You can face my justice here and now, or you can face the legal system with every piece of evidence I've collected. Security footage, witness statements, medical reports. Your history of abuse with other women. All of it delivered to the district attorney with enough pressure to ensure you get the maximum sentence. Randall's eyes darted between Archie and the knife, his mind working frantically. What's your justice? What would you do to me? Archie smiled, and it was a terrible thing to see. Things that would make prison look like mercy. Things that would leave you broken in ways that never heal. But also things that would be over eventually, one way or another. Prison, on the other hand, that's years of your life. Years of looking over your shoulder, of other inmates finding out what you did to a woman, of living in a cage. The choice hung in the air between them. Randall's breathing came in short, panicked gasps. What happened next in that warehouse, Archie would never speak of in detail. But Randall Lodge learned the difference between a bar fight and systematic suffering. He learned what it meant to be completely helpless. He learned every creative application of pain that Archie had accumulated over years of ruling through fear. Hours later, when Archie finally stood and stepped back, Randall was a broken thing, barely conscious, whimpering. Archie felt hollow, empty. The rage had burned itself out, and all that remained was ash. He looked at Ivan. "Hospital," he said. "Anonymous drop-off. Make sure they know he was involved in criminal activity, but don't mention Katie. I want him to live with this. To remember." "Boss," Ivan said carefully. He could talk. He could go to the police. "Let him," Archie said. "Who's going to believe him? A man with a history of violence against women, claiming he was kidnapped and tortured? By me? A respected businessman with no criminal record?" He laughed, the sound bitter. "They'll think he got what was coming from someone else he hurt. Or they'll think he's crazy. Either way, it doesn't touch us." They left Randall in an alley behind Mercy General with a burner phone and a single message. "Stay away from Catherine Grant. If I ever see you again, if I ever hear you've spoken to her or about her, what I did tonight will seem like kindness. Understand?" Randall managed a nod, tears streaming down his ruined face. Archie walked away without looking back. He went home, showered, changed into fresh clothes. Then he returned to the hospital, to Katie's room, where she was awake and trying to eat breakfast with her good hand. When she saw him, she smiled, and it broke his heart all over again. "Hey," she said softly. "You look tired." "Didn't sleep much," Archie admitted, pulling a chair close to her bed. "How are you feeling?" "Sore, but better. The doctor says I can go home tomorrow if the swelling goes down." Archie took her hand gently. "You're not going back to your apartment. You're staying with me until you're completely healed." No arguments. Katie's smile faded. "Alex, you promised you wouldn't do anything." "I know." He lied again. "And I kept my promise. The police have Randall's information. They'll handle it. But that doesn't mean I'm letting you out of my sight until I know you're safe." She studied his face, and he wondered what she saw there. If she could read the violence he'd committed in her name, the blood he'd washed from his hands just hours ago. But Katie had always chosen to see the best in him, even when it wasn't there. "Okay," she said finally. "Thank you for being here. Always," Archie promised. "For you, always." The next 3 weeks passed in a strange domestic routine. Katie recovered in Archie's penthouse, and he found himself rearranging his entire schedule around her needs. He brought her books from the library, watched terrible reality shows with her, learned to make soup that didn't come from a can. His men looked at him with confusion, seeing their ruthless boss playing nursemaid. But Archie didn't care. For these few weeks, he got to be just a brother. Just Alex, not Archie Grant, crime lord and enforcer. It was the closest thing to normal he'd experienced in years. Katie never mentioned Randall Lodge again. The police had questioned her once, but Randall had disappeared, left the city, his apartment abandoned, his phone disconnected. The investigation went nowhere. Katie seemed relieved to let it drop, to focus on healing and getting back to her studies. But Archie noticed the changes in her, how she flinched at loud noises, how she checked the locks obsessively, how she had nightmares that woke her screaming. The physical injuries would heal, the psychological ones would take longer. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset through the penthouse windows, Katie spoke quietly. "I know you did something." Archie's heart stopped. "What?" Katie turned to look at him, her bruises now faded to yellow and green. "Randall. I know you did something to him. I know you didn't just let the police handle it." Archie considered lying again, but something in her eyes stopped him. She deserved the truth. At least part of it. "Yes," he said simply. "I made sure he understood the consequences of his actions. I made sure he'd never hurt you or anyone else again." Katie was quiet for a long moment. "I should be angry," she said finally. "I should tell you that violence isn't the answer, that you should have trusted the system. But I can't. Because the system has failed so many women like me. Girls who file reports that go nowhere, who get restraining orders that don't stop bullets or fists. And because..." She paused, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Because part of me is glad. Part of me wanted him to suffer the way he made me suffer." Archie pulled her close, careful of her still healing ribs. "You're human, Katie. It's okay to want justice, even if it comes from dark places. I just don't want you to become like me, to let the darkness take over." Katie pulled back to look at him. "You think you're all darkness, Alex. But you're not. You took me in when our parents died. You paid for my education. You've protected me my entire life. You're capable of terrible things, but you're also capable of incredible love. That's what makes you human, not a monster." Tears burned behind Archie's eyes, but he blinked them away. "I don't deserve you." "Maybe not," Katie said with a small smile. "But you're stuck with me anyway." 2 weeks later, Katie went back to her apartment, though Archie had installed a security system that would make Fort Knox jealous. She returned to her classes, to her friends, to building the life she wanted. But she called him every day, and they had dinner together twice a week. And slowly, she healed. And Archie watched from the shadows, making sure Randall Lodge stayed gone, stayed silent, stayed afraid. He'd kept eyes on the broken man, knew he'd fled to another state, knew he jumped at shadows and drank too much, and would never be the same. Good. Some lessons needed to be permanent. Months passed. Katie's bruises faded completely. She started dating again, carefully, and Archie made sure to thoroughly investigate anyone who came near her. She graduated medical school with honors. She started her residency at a children's hospital. She was building the life she deserved, and Archie was proud. One evening, she brought someone to meet him. His name was David, a pediatric surgeon, kind eyes, gentle manner. Archie had already run a background check that would have made the FBI jealous. The man was clean, genuinely good, the kind of person Katie deserved. They had dinner together at an expensive restaurant, and Archie watched as David treated Katie with reverence and respect, as he listened when she spoke and laughed at her jokes, and never once raised his voice or showed a flash of temper. At the end of the night, David excused himself to take a phone call, and Katie leaned across the table. "So? What do you think?" Archie chose his words carefully. "He seems like a good man." "He is," Katie said firmly. "And before you have him followed or investigated or whatever it is you do, I already know everything about him. I did my own research. I'm not walking into anything blind again." Archie smiled, genuine pride warming his chest. "You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for." "I learned from the best," Katie said. "You taught me that it's okay to be careful, that protecting yourself isn't the same as living in fear. Just promise me one thing. Anything." If David ever hurts you, if he ever makes you feel unsafe, or small, or afraid, you tell me immediately. Katie's expression softened. I promise. But Alex, you have to promise me something too. What's that? Promise me you'll let yourself be happy, that you won't spend your whole life in the shadows, protecting me and everyone else while forgetting to protect yourself. You deserve love too. You deserve peace. Archie looked at his sister, this brilliant, resilient woman who'd survived violence and come out stronger, and felt something shift inside him. Maybe she was right. Maybe there was more to life than revenge and empire building. Maybe he could find something good in the darkness. I'll try, he said. That's all I ask, Katie replied. David returned, apologizing for the interruption. The conversation moved on to lighter topics, and for the rest of the evening, Archie allowed himself to simply be a brother, having dinner with his sister and her boyfriend. No crime lord, no enforcer, no monster. Just Alex. Later, alone in his penthouse, Archie stood at the window looking out over the city he controlled through fear and force. Somewhere out there, Randall Lodge was still afraid, still broken, still paying for what he'd done. Somewhere out there, other predators prowled, looking for vulnerable targets. But Katie was safe. Katie was thriving. Katie had survived. And maybe that was enough. A year after the attack, Archie received an invitation. Katie and David were getting married. The wedding was small, intimate, held in a garden overlooking the harbor. Katie wore a simple white dress that made her look radiant, and David looked at her like she hung the moon and stars. Archie walked her down the aisle, giving her away to a man who would treat her the way she deserved. And as he watched them exchange vows, promising to love and protect each other, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Maybe Katie was right. Maybe he wasn't all darkness. Maybe there was still light somewhere inside him, waiting to be found. The reception was joyful, full of laughter and dancing and celebration. Archie stood to the side, watching his sister spin across the dance floor in David's arms, her face glowing with happiness. Yvonne approached, holding 2 glasses of champagne. He handed one to Archie. She looks happy, boss. She is, Archie agreed. And she's safe. That's all that matters. Ivan was quiet for a moment. You ever think about it? Having something like that for yourself? Archie took a sip of champagne. Sometimes. But my world, what I do, it's not fair to ask someone to live in that darkness with me. Maybe, Ivan said. Or maybe you just haven't found someone brave enough to handle it yet. Before Archie could respond, Katie appeared, grabbing his hand. Come dance with me, she demanded, pulling him toward the floor. I don't dance, Archie protested. You do tonight, Katie said firmly. It's my wedding and you'll do what I say. He let her lead him onto the dance floor and they swayed together to a slow song, brother and sister, bound by blood and trauma and love. Thank you, Katie whispered. For everything, for protecting me, for letting me heal, for being here today. You don't have to thank me, Archie said. You're my sister. I'd do anything for you. I know, Katie said, pulling back to look at him. And that's why I need you to promise me something. What? Promise me you'll find your own happiness, your own person, your own reason to keep fighting. Because you can't just live for me, Alex. You have to live for yourself too. Archie didn't know how to respond to that, so he just held his sister close and let the music carry them and tried to believe that maybe, someday, he could find the kind of peace she'd found. The song ended. Katie kissed his cheek and returned to David, and Archie stepped back into the shadows where he belonged, watching over the people he loved, protecting them from the darkness he carried inside himself. 3 years after Katie's attack, Archie's world had settled into a new kind of normal. His empire ran smoothly, his sister was happy and safe, and he'd learned to live with the ghost of Randall Lodge's screams echoing in his memory. He didn't regret what he'd done. He never would. But Katie's words from her wedding stayed with him. Find your own happiness, your own person. It seemed impossible. Who would want to love a man like him? Who could look past the violence and the fear and see something worth saving? He was standing in his office late one night, reviewing reports from his operations, when Ivan knocked on the door. "Boss, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent." Archie frowned. "Who?" "A woman," Ivan said. "Says her name is Grace. Says someone's been following her and she heard you help people who are in trouble." Archie's first instinct was to refuse. He wasn't in the business of rescuing random women. But something in Ivan's tone made him pause. "Send her in." The woman who entered was small, dark-haired, with green eyes that held fear and determination in equal measure. She reminded him, uncomfortably, of Katie. Of how his sister must have looked the night Randall attacked her. "I'm sorry to bother you," the woman Grace said quickly, "but I didn't know where else to go. Someone's stalking me, following me home, showing up at my work. The police say they can't do anything until he actually hurts me." And I heard. She paused, gathering courage. "I heard you help people when the law won't." Archie studied her, seeing the exhaustion in her face, the way she kept glancing at the door like she expected someone to burst through it. He thought about Katie, about all the women who fell through the cracks of a system that was supposed to protect them. And he made a decision. "Tell me everything," he said. "Start from the beginning." As Grace told her story, Archie felt something shift inside him. Not the cold rage he'd felt when Katie was hurt. Something different. Something warmer. Purpose, maybe. Or the beginning of redemption. When she finished, he nodded. "You're safe now," he said simply. "I'll handle this." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Why? Why would you help me? You don't even know me." "Because someone should have helped my sister when she needed it," Archie said quietly. "Because I have the power to stop this, and that means I have the responsibility to act. And because—" He paused, meeting her eyes. "Because everyone deserves to be safe. Everyone deserves to sleep without fear." Grace smiled through her tears, and something in Archie's chest cracked open. Maybe Katie was right. Maybe there was still light to be found, even in the darkness. Maybe it wasn't too late for him after all. What happens when the most dangerous man in the city discovers that someone hurt the only person he truly loves? He becomes something worse than a monster. He becomes justice itself, brutal and absolute and unforgiving. But maybe, just maybe, he also becomes something more. Maybe he becomes a protector not just for one person, but for everyone who needs protecting. Maybe he learns that power wielded for the right reasons isn't just violence, it's hope. This is the story of a man who ruled through fear but loved with fierce devotion. This is the story of a sister who survived and a brother who made sure her attacker never forgot the price of cruelty. And this is the story of how sometimes the darkness inside us isn't something to be afraid of. Sometimes it's the very thing that lights the way home. Archie Grant would never be a good man by conventional standards, but he would be good enough for Katie, for Grace, for everyone who fell through the cracks and needed someone to catch them. And in the end, maybe that was its own kind of redemption.